As many of you know, Maiko are apprentice geisha. They perform at public events and tea houses alongside Geisha, or Geiko, as they're known in Kyoto. They study Japanese dance, music, and etiquette. And as of April 2020, Kyoto had about 80 Maiko. Of course, Maiko are famous as the city's mascot, and you see cartoon Maiko everywhere in Kyoto. We find perky Maiko gracing maps, menus, and city posters, and Maiko morphing into Post-it notes, hand towels, and dancing in the foam atop our cappuccinos. Even Pikachu takes a turn as a Maiko. Unlike Kyoto's cultural sites and those venerable arts, these cartoonish Maiko inspired laughter. They invite us to play, but they also brand the old capital as a female-friendly space, a girls' city. In the mid-2000s, amid a rise in domestic tourism in Kyoto, Maiko numbers grew too. In 2008, for the first time in decades, there were 100 Maiko in Kyoto, a Maiko boom, some said. Enchantment with the Maiko in the 2000s sparked new tourist activities and inspired popular media nationally. All kinds of visual, cinematic, and literary text appeared. Clearly, representations of the Maiko far exceeded her actual numbers in 2008 and continued to do so today, suggesting that the millennial Maiko has struck a chord in the 21st century. As Japan entered its second decade of economic stagnation in the 2000s, the Maiko, as Kyoto's quintessential Japanese girl, offered reassurance. She stood for the relevance of the Hanamachi world past in the present. Elaborately coiffed, ornamented, painted, and enrobed, she modeled Maiko tradition as Kyoto fashion. This millennial Maiko displayed fine manners, seamlessly performing the spontaneous teen and the well-schooled apprentice. These representations of the exemplary Maiko also piqued curiosity. Who was the girl behind the mask? What girl takes on this role? What is she like when she's not like a Maiko? So I was curious about the phenomenon, and about 10 years ago, I started working on this topic. I should emphasize that my investigation is not an ethnography. I didn't do lots of interviews, but a study rather of the textual Maiko, the Maiko as she is represented in popular Japanese narratives of the 2000s. As far as I know, this is the first academic study devoted to analyzing Maiko representations. As you'll see, this literature is celebratory. We'll hardly hear a negative comment anywhere. It's also largely authored by women. I found that these millennial narratives stress agency. Unlike the exploited Maiko of the past, today's Maiko, who come from all over Japan, choose this vocation, largely due to their love of kimono and dance. Yet I found that as the stigma of sexual servitude receded, replaced by girls' agency, the notion of this exemplary maiko-rashi Maiko, that is, the impeccably comported maiko-like Maiko, arose. As I show in this book, the perfection inherent in maiko-likeness has motivated various tropes of masquerade, inspiring narratives of ordinary Japanese girls and even one ordinary boy striving to meet this ideal. These narratives of masquerade speak to the effort and pleasure of performing femininity in millennial Japan, reinforcing the boundaries of gender while posing possibilities for subverting them. But I also found that there was very little attention in this literature focused on Geiko. Maiko narratives in films, fiction, and narrative manga in the 2000s represent the Geiko as an ambiguous figure, uncomfortably associated with accumulated wealth, independence outside marriage, and single motherhood. It's one thing to cheer on this hardworking chase girl whose future remains open and may include marriage, but another thing to root for the Geiko. So tonight, here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to begin by giving you a brief overview of the book's chapters, about 5 minutes, and then turn to developing the book's major theme, narratives of the ordinary girl within the masquerade. And then I'll wrap up with thoughts on the Geiko character. So starting with the chapters. The introduction gives an historical overview of the Maiko, her costume, shifts in her social status, her similarity similarity to other kinds of shoujo or maiden characters in Japan. I also look at where she fits in geisha studies and how she connects more broadly to themes of masquerade in Japan, especially with women. I emphasize, though, how Kyoto's civic and commercial organizations employ maiko imagery to brand Kyoto as a female-friendly city, as you see in this transportation poster. This poster depicts a wave of young women wearing ordinary clothes, but adorned in maiko makeup, hairstyles, and kanzashi ornaments as they head to Kyoto for girl fun. It imagines a space of nearly identical young women and no one else trading on associations of shoujo consumerism, dress up, and friendship. Characterizing shopping as a feminine activity, the maiko poster promises a doubly feminine enjoyment of Kyoto, but it also implies that the maiko and geiko world is no longer reserved only for wealthy men, but is now a space of leisure and fantasy for women too. They can claim it as their playground. Chapter 1 introduces popular Japanese guides published in the 2000s to Kyoto's 5 geisha districts, or hanamachi. We learn the most about Gion, the biggest district. We hear about the community's values, the Teahouse system, the roles of women in leadership, and mainly men as clients. Authors argue passionately for the relevance of this world, even for Japanese who've never stepped foot in it, urging their Japanese readers to take pride in the hanamachi as an arts community worthy of preservation. Chapter 2 explains the maiko career path from trainee to maiko to geiko, and the importance of the okiya, or geisha house, and its mother to training the maiko. But I mainly focus here on the literature that is mainly etiquette guides, memoirs, and interviews with elders on what they say about the values behind this training. By emphasizing training in proper etiquette and dance, this literature also again advocates for the hanamachi as a site of Japanese decorum, one that all Japanese could learn from. Moreover, it divorces the maiko from the mizu shobai world of sex and entertainment and any hints of exploitation. But the fact that it makes this clear shows that the authors are assuming that many Japanese would still think this, even reading the book. The chapter explains another concept of likeness that's critical to maiko narratives in the 2000s, the ideal of jibun rashi, that is, being like oneself, or maybe true to oneself. Prominent in Japanese popular media and state discourse since the 1980s, the ideal of jibun rashi presumes an authentic self and the freedom to nurture that self. Many of the maiko characters in the 2000s actually struggle over how they will ultimately attain their jibun rashi life. As apprentices, they must conform to a rather fixed maiko persona. As geiko, however, they are expected to leave that girlishness behind and let their more individualistic persona shine. Getting to this point, becoming geiko, some former maiko report feeling liberated, finally, as a geiko, done with being a maiko, while others miss their maiko days and all the indulgence afforded the girlish maiko. Chapter 3 analyzes 3 books, all personal accounts of their hanamachi careers by women who'd been maiko in different decades, the 1960s, the 1990s, and the 2000s. All were published in Japanese in 2007, amid the rise in Kyoto tourism and the boost in maiko numbers. All seem aimed at women readers, but they're very different in flavor and they're lots of fun to read. All speak to the point, though, of switching on and off their public hanamachi persona and what doing this, learning to do this, means to their own maturity and sense of self. Chapter 4 is kind of a long chapter. It compares 5 maiko narratives targeting a national audience produced from the 1950s to the present. I argue that this comparison shows a major shift in representations of the maiko's position. The 1950 films portray her as a victim, exploited by wily Teahouse managers and as the sexual prey of wealthy men. The 2000s narratives, however, completely divorced the maiko from any connection to sexual labor or exploitation. But we will also see that as the victim image receded, expectations increased for Maiko perfection. Thus, the term maiko-likeness becomes an important term in the 2000s, which also leads to themes of masquerade as girls feel a gap between their ordinary selves and this perfect Maiko-like Maiko they must embody. Chapter 6 analyzes, chapter 5, takes up light fiction, a kind of boys' love series called Boy Maiko, There Goes Chiyogiku. It ran from 2002 to 2014 in 54 small volumes. Author Nanami Haruka reimagines the Maiko here as an icon for cross-gender play. Creating tall tales, she depicts the boy Mikiya alternating between the language, behavioral codes, and personas of a 13-year-old boy and a Maiko, seeing the world through two very different gendered personas. Chapter 6 analyzes comic, even absurd images of Maiko like you see here that produce a lighter, often satiric look. I explored two sites, the funny designs of sporting Maiko, that is Maiko playing baseball, golf, and volleyball in full costume, created by the textile firm Irakuya in the 1920s and early 1930s, and then revived in the 2000s. I also take up the 100 Maiko illustrations exhibit on permanent display since 2006 at the Kyoto International Manga Museum. And these are so fun. The Imagine Maiko, of course, there's many kind of cute doll figures, but they're also Maiko as space aliens, animals, a Buddha statue, a granny, and even a daikon radish Maiko. Here we see how this visual comedy invites tourists to experience the old capital as a lighthearted place of leisure. And I put more of these images in my slides if you'd like to talk to that at the end of the presentation. Wrapping up, I look at how the Maiko as exemplar of millennial Japanese girlhood highlights through contrast visions of the ordinary Japanese girl who could be imagined as, well, the Maiko's hometown girlfriend or sister, the Maiko herself before her transformation, or even the Maiko incognito on her day off. I argue that these constructions of both Maiko and her ordinary girl foil tell us much about girlhood in Japan. So let me use the remainder of my time to take up this argument, drawing examples from the book's chapters. And let's start with this manga. It's by Terashima Reiko. Here we see a girl in an underrobe wearing a skull cap, a wig festooned with kanzashi magically hovers above her. The caption reads, "In the middle of the Maiko makeover." Okay, well, when I saw this, I assumed this girl was doing cosplay, one of hundreds of tourists that enjoy the Maiko makeover at Kyoto Photo Studios. I took the wink to mean, bet you think I'm a real Maiko, but we both know it's a disguise, right? But turns out the artist had a different story for this manga. She wrote to me saying, this girl she sees as an actual Maiko, and she sees her manga as revealing the secret that the Maiko is at heart an ordinary girl. Maybe both readings blur the lines here between authenticity and deception in the image, work and play. The transformative power of the Maiko's anachronistic formal look easily gives rise to notions of masquerade. The fact that she is costumed from head to toe with a special hairstyle and makeup, and even trained to speak in an older Kyoto dialect, enacts quite a transformation. Many Maikos say they don't even recognize themselves when they're first costumed. No wonder that Maiko report feeling as though they have two different identities. In her account, Ichimame, that we see here, talks about feeling relieved on her days off when she's wearing street clothes and blends back into the crowd as, just another ordinary girl, although she also loves being a Maiko. It's framed as a stark binary, days on as a performer, days off as an ordinary girl. But as we go through many Maiko narratives, we find that the meanings of ordinariness itself change. In many cases, ordinariness is prized as a site of authenticity, an essential and natural self that sometimes struggles to embody Maiko-likeness. At other times, though, the girl is a bit of a slacker who can discover artistic authenticity and mature through Maiko training. Either way, this idea of the ordinary girl is critical to Maiko narratives in the 2000s. After all, without the ordinary girl in this picture, there could be no sense of masquerade, no sense of struggle to perform well, no striving, no evidence of choice. She is always the foil to the Maiko, the before to the Maiko's after. The text's emphasis on the Maiko's mission and the diligence required to uphold it tend to eclipse the ordinary girl, but they never erase her. In fact, Maiko narratives depend on her. For the ordinary girl in this picture makes the millennial Maiko's narrative a story of agency, reinforcing the post-war shift in the Maiko image from victim to artist. It's the ordinary girl who chooses to become a Maiko. She's the every girl in Maiko narratives, and this every girl is imagined as unremarkable, uniform, and ubiquitous throughout Japan. It's the ordinary girl character, as much as her Maiko Masquerade, that narrates girlhood in these stories. So let's take a look at some of the stories. Reviewing the Maiko text analyzed in Maiko Masquerade, we find the ordinary girl has a history too. In the 1955 film Janken Musume, Maiko Hinogiku seeks rescue from the feudalistic Hanamachi and the patron who will buy her contract, precisely because she identifies as a post-war teenager with a desire for independence and romantic love. This Maiko yearns to leave the Hanamachi and reclaim her legal name. Ordinariness is liberation for her. It magically allows her to join the emerging youth culture of her teenage friends, her girlfriends. Hinagiku's ordinariness points more broadly to the teenager liberated from wartime Japan, free to pursue life, faithful to a new generation's ethics. Visions of the ordinary girl surface in Crimson Fragrance too. This is Yamato Waki's best-selling adaptation of Iwasaki Mineko's memoir, Geisha, A Life, which describes her Maiko experiences in the late 1960s. Born in 1949, Iwasaki had really been pushed into an okiya and became its heir while still a child. Yamato imagines that the Maiko Sakuya dreams of becoming an ordinary girl in truly expansive ways, as you see in this manga. Sakuya treasures these rare days off when she exclaims, "I felt like I could be myself." Yet we also see Sakuya finding herself in dance, where mastery gives her a sense of transcending the self, becoming one with dance. But ultimately, it's her sense of responsibility to her okiya and this passion for dance that push Sakuya to remain a Maiko and then become a Geiko. Interestingly, Iwasaki's voice is the only critical one in all of the Maiko literature. Sakuya leaves the Hanamachi when she realizes she cannot make any changes to benefit Maiko or Geiko, either financially or institutionally. In her memoir, Iwasaki describes this battle with Hanamachi gatekeepers as heated, rancorous. In the manga, Yamato draws them as older, irate men about to literally blow their tops with anger. The 2008 NHK morning drama Dandan dramatizes the tension between the Maiko and the ordinary girl by imagining twins raised apart who discover each other's existence on their 18th birthday. And to the right, you see their blended family. Maiko Nozomi has been reared by their Geiko birth mother. Since birth, she's been destined for life as a Maiko and Geiko. Her twin, Megumi, raised by their fisherman father in Matsue, is an ordinary high school student who appears to have all the choice in the world over her future. Nozomi finds her twin's ordinary girl life so appealing that twice she masquerades in blue jeans as her twin, first to experience life in rural Matsue with her father's family, then to spend a day at college impersonating her sister. For Nozomi, her sister's ordinariness promises freedom of choice, interaction with people her own age, and the potential for romantic love. Unlike the Iwasaki Sakuya character, Nozomi leaves the Hanamachi to find herself, renouncing her obligation to her Okiya, becoming an outcast as a result, and claiming an ordinary girl's freedom to define her own life. But she does not stay with this life for long outside the community. Once Nozomi realizes that a Geiko can also walk a jibun-rashi path, a path true to herself within the Hanamachi, she heads back, thus bringing an apt resolution to a millennial NHK story that must endorse both personal freedom, community values, and respect for one's elders. Unlike the 1950s Maiko Hinagiku, who escapes the clutches of a lecherous Dana, neither Sakuya in the 1960s nor Nozomi in the 2000s face any hint of sexual servitude. Their narratives do acknowledge, however, that the stigma of the Maiko as a girl for sale still lingers. And Sakuya, Iwasaki, talks about sexual harassment in the Hanamachi in the 1960s. The freedom of the ordinary girl choosing to become a Maiko in the 2000s allows for humorous narratives that call attention to ordinariness's charm and personality, as though to give the reader a sense of a break too. These are very fun to read. You feel relaxed. Koyama Aiko's popular girls comic, Miss Cook for the Maiko Girls, like Terashima's Winking Maiko, creates the ordinary girl behind the mask as comic relief from the demands of performing Maiko likeness. Most of the action occurs backstage at the Okiya, where a whole band of Maiko live and interact, revealing themselves as rambunctious teens who must tame their appetites to comport themselves as Maiko. The lone Geiko character, the charismatic Momoko, inhabits an adult world that the Maiko find mysterious but hesitate to discover. The comic celebrates their girls' world of Maiko training, their friendship, and their appetites backstage for ordinary home-cooked food. So you have ordinary girls, ordinary food. These comic moments may even assuage fears that the girl might lose herself in the Maiko Masquerade, but they show that nope, she's here all the time, trying not to pop out. Even Koyama's model Maiko Momohana faces a constant challenge against her appetite at the most inopportune moments, a comic sign of her ordinary girl self who will not be neglected. All these Maiko narratives reveal how the Maiko's relationship to ordinariness changes with the choices open to her and with the shifting demands of Maiko performance of her era. Narratives shade ordinariness then differently by identifying the aspects of the self that must be tamed in that particular masquerade. Does she wish to escape sexual servitude, familial obligations, lack of career choice, or merely satisfy a rumbling stomach? The resolutions of the conflict between the girl's Maiko and ordinary selves change over time as well. Janken Musume values the liberation of the democratized teenager who leaves the Hanamachi in the 50s, while Dandan celebrates the return of the prodigal Maiko who claims her Jibun-rashi path in the community as an aspiring leader in the 2000s. The Chiyogiku series strays from the norm of the Maiko as an ordinary Japanese girl, imagining an ordinary boy becoming the top Maiko of Gion. Nanami Haruka's vision of the Mikiya Chiyogiku pair dramatizes a gender binary that resists privileging one gendered role over the other until the end of the series. Rather like Dandan's twins, the boy and his Maiko double are foils for each other. Rather like an onnagata, Kabuki's female role player, Mikiya earns praise for his exemplary Maiko likeness. He has no need to compensate for his lack of female physicality at all. Rather, following modern onnagata ideals, it is precisely this lack that allows him to create a transcendent Maiko femininity, to become the most maiko-rashi, Maiko of all. Even though Chiyogiku stands out among all the texts for its obvious use of masquerade, the fluidity of the movement between boy and girl here appears to be the easiest of transitions. Chiyogiku's maneuvers to escape dicey situations and avoid exposure give the tale a kind of game-like quality that makes Maiko role-playing fun. Delighting in his gender agility, Mikia rarely feels any contradiction in performing femininity, especially when costumed as a Maiko. But he denies that he's doing any Maiko cosplay. He says, "I'm a real Maiko." Taking pleasure in and experiencing the world in two gendered personas, Mikia anticipates a sense of loss when his maturing body will make the disguise impossible when his voice changes. At the end of the series, when Chiyogiku is gone and Mikia and his partner pledge their love as adult men, the story is over, and so is the cross-gendering. The question remains, as the narrator says, whether Japan will catch up to other advanced nations and make same-sex marriage legal. Returning to the ordinary girl, we see her characterized in etiquette texts and discussions of demanding Maiko training as a slacker. The guides frame this ordinary Japanese girl as an overly indulged teenager. She has no social skills. She's unwilling to take direction. She needs constant praise. She doesn't know how to live communally. She can't sit on tatami mats even or use chopsticks. She could choose to do better is the message. The personal accounts of Geiko and Maiko and etiquette guides to the Hanamachi show how this ordinary girl, even if she does not become a Maiko, can draw on a national storehouse of artistry as preserved in the Hanamachi. In Hanamachi texts, and Maiko-likeness and Japaneseness, inflected by Kyoto traditions, become one and the same. This advice makes girls' attempts to transcend ordinariness good and even patriotic. Characterizations of the Maiko as polished by her mastery of older forms of Japanese etiquette makes us ask, is the ordinary Japanese girl insufficiently Japanese? A Kyoto-centric pride emerges in many of these narratives, especially guides on Maiko training that imply that the finest expression of Japanese femininity resides in the Hanamachi, that is the secret to transforming the ordinary girl and the readers of the book. All Maiko texts assume their Maiko characters are ethnically Japanese, but not necessarily from Kyoto. As Hanamachi elders are quick to note, since 2001, over 90% of Maiko have come from hometowns elsewhere in Japan. As non-Kyoto girls, these Maiko are considered undifferentiated, just girls who came from elsewhere. And there's no mention in the literature about any difference among them. References in Maiko texts to newcomers' habit of slipping from their dialects, slipping into their dialects, are what most often signal these non-Kyoto roots. Gion Teahouse manager Yoshimura Kaoru voices concerns about outsiders weakening the Hanamachi brand. She writes, "Party conversations have really changed. In the past, Maiko from elsewhere always claimed to be from Kyoto if clients asked, but now, without the slightest hesitation, they respond, 'Oh, I'm from Fukuoka. I'm from Akita.' Even though these Maiko at this point are speaking in Hanamachi dialect, different from their hometown speech, they do not hide their non-Kyoto roots." Another Gion elder, Arai Mameji, wonders if this embrace of difference might lead to girls from other countries applying to become Maiko too. She says, "Well, that might be fun for clients. Certainly the girls from the provinces intrigue guests with their difference, but the topics of conversation always turn to their hometowns. Taking the long view of this, will things endure only by virtue of this curiosity, this difference?" The task of transforming the ordinary Japanese girl from elsewhere into a Maiko circles back to the value placed on Maiko likeness as brand image. If girls refer to their non-Kyoto roots, they change what it means to be Maiko-like, making it both authentic. After all, she looks and speaks like a Maiko, and a masquerade. She really comes from somewhere else. When I asked a Hanamachi insider about the possibility of non-Japanese becoming Maiko, she said, "But you already understand that people come to Kyoto to see the Maiko-like Maiko, right? What would happen to that?" So here we see how expectations of Maiko likeness prize Kyoto roots, but limit diversity. Even more important, than narrowing the possibilities for maiko-likeness. Such concerns also constrain what it means to be an ordinary Japanese girl. Turning to just the comic relief in the Maiko stories, we observe how often the ordinary girl represents girlhood itself as carefree. In contrast, the Maiko has a whole schedule of lessons, parties, and public appearances. She has to meet these high expectations for Maiko-likeness, but the ordinary girl only has to be herself. So this binary of the Maiko and the ordinary girl inspires admiration for the apprentice, but it romanticizes ordinary girlhood. It imagines the pleasures the Maiko has given up for her artistic path. In her memoir, Geiko Kokimi wistfully daydreams about what it would have been like to have a teenage date on the banks of the Kamo River. In hers, Iwasaki Mineko regrets her mischance at a high schooler's life of team sports and study. As though living in this dream, Dandan's Megumi, the drama's ordinary girl, bikes all over town in high school. She hangs out with boys in her band, wears casual clothes, leaves home for college, volunteers, and has her evenings to herself. Eventually, she chooses to become a nurse. She has her struggles too, but all in all, her life is pretty rosy and she chooses it. But what happens if we take the Maiko out of this narrative? What view of the ordinary girl's life would emerge then? Inevitably, her life would appear more complicated and less rosy. We'd find pathways to success often blocked by tiresome gender restrictions. We'd see that some doors remain closed to her, and we'd learn that some dreams are never even dreamed. But in many Maiko narratives, the ordinary girl appears coherent, effortless. On her day off in boyish clothing, Ichimami feels at home in her typical teen mode. The myopic view of two forms of girlhood in many texts, narrativized as the Maiko and the ordinary girl, constructs notions of choice, but depoliticizes girlhood in Japan. The pair are almost stock characters. The binary averts attention from the foreclosures affected by gender, class, regional privilege, ethnicity, and even the hierarchy of high schools. Of course, though, this is a celebratory literature, not a critical one, and it's appealing for presenting two paths which seem like any girl could choose from. Well, what happens if we only have the Maiko and no ordinary girl? Well, according to the literature, a clear career path lies ahead for the Maiko if she wants to remain and become a Geiko. As an artist and entrepreneur, she must develop business skills as well as artistic abilities. She must let go of her maiko-like persona and develop her jibun rashi one. She will never have to compete with men for promotion. Her community has a vested interest in her success and offers a career path that is designed to support her on the way to the top. She has the potential to earn lots of money. It's left evident how well the Geiko might transfer her knowledge to a career outside the Hanamachi, but judging by the literature, if she remains within the Hanamachi, her future is secure to the extent the community itself remains viable. Nevertheless, as a single woman devoted to her arts career, the Geiko remains outside the orthodox route of marriage. The millennial Geiko's social position recalls to me media portraits of elite career women, a glamorous figure in TV dramas, fiction, and women's magazines in Japan in the 2000s. She's single, sophisticated, job-focused, and independent. She works at getting ahead in competitive men's worlds. She may well have a love life, but she's not aiming for marriage. Like the Geiko, the career woman too bears a stigma. Her selfishness is causing Japan's low birth rate. In 2004, critic Sakai Junko's satirical book, The Distant Howl of the Loser Dog, famously pushed back at that condemnation. It's also striking to see the way Hanamachi literature brings the Geiko and career women together. Maiko narratives of the 2000s, we remember, are largely produced by women, focus on women's lives, and are geared toward women readers. Most of the women who are authors of this literature have all formed bonds with women in the Hanamachi, and they really promote its salon culture. Also in 2020, half the members of the Hanamachi support group in Kyoto were women. Even NHK's Dandan suggests that the Hanamachi will strive to attract more women as clients. As soon as Nozomi assumes the role of Teahouse manager, right away she institutes elegant afternoon parties for ladies. And I think this makes a difference. When attention turns to Geiko entertaining women instead of men and befriending other women professionals, a sense of a woman-friendly space forms, one that takes femininity as pleasure among women. Elegance and affiliation replace stigma, and the idealization of Maiko becomes then a sentimental bond of imagined girlhoods among these women. And here's the end. Studying the Maiko as a cultural icon of Japanese girlhood, Maiko Masquerade demonstrates how over the late 20th century, the erasure of past associations with sex work released the Maiko's image from victimhood, opening the way for new interpretations and new stories. No longer a victim, the Maiko emerged as the hardworking artist, the chaste model of Kyoto etiquette, and the good girl of Japan. Analysis of themes of masquerade here show how this paragon of girlhood could motivate guides to Japanese manners, but also subvert norms in stories of the boy Maiko, the hungry girl Maiko, and the morphing manga Maiko. It also highlights assumptions about who counts as an ordinary Japanese girl, and the meanings attached to her in 2000s Japan.